session. إذا سأقدم لكم الجلسة باللغة العربية والأوراق سيتم تقديمها باللغة الإنجليزية. الترجمة متاحة. We'd like to welcome you to the fourth session of the second day in the conference entitled Iran and the Changing Strategic Landscape of the Middle East. And the title of this fourth panel is Iran-GCC Relations and Regional Diplomacy. We have witnessed in recent years rounds of escalation and pacification, the latest of which is the relative détente that we have seen in the relations between Iran and the GCC since 2023 as a result of the mediation between Saudi Arabia and Iran. We have in this session 3 papers and 4 speakers, and each speaker will be allocated 15 minutes to present his or her paper. And after that, we're going to have a session of half an hour to pose questions. We kindly ask you to ask concise and short questions and not comments. The title of the first paper, which is going to be presented by both Gawdat Bahgat and Katherine Holden. They're going to talk about the thaw in Iran-GCC relations and the changing regional balance of power. So we have Dr. Gawdat Bahgat, who is a professor, distinguished professor at the National Defense University in Washington, D.C. His areas of expertise include energy security, proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, political economy, and U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. He's authored in excess of 11 books and more than 200 academic articles. Also, we have Katherine Holden, who is going to be with us also in this segment. She has worked with the State Department and also the Near East South Asia Center and the Washington International Diplomatic Academy. She holds a master's in global studies and a bachelor's degree in international studies with a minor in Arabic from the University of Oklahoma. Gawdat and Katherine, the floor is yours. صباحكم أيها السيدات والسادة. أود أن أبدأ
invitation to this conference. I've been studying the region for a long time, and this is my first time in Qatar. It's been wonderful so far. So thank you so much for the invitation. I met Gawdat a long time ago professionally. We worked on his paper with Dr. Antashami, his book, together. So this is a wonderful privilege to be here with him today as well. So I would like to start with an outline on the paper. The main argument is that sectarian and ethnic divides are no longer the main source of instability in the Middle East. The paper focuses on Iran-GCC relations as a bloc versus individual states, and then the outline of the paper itself follows a national, regional, and international order. And then there are 3 main hurdles that are also discussed in the paper, the first one being the U.S. as the key security grantor, possible Saudi-Israeli normalization, and then the 12-day war, along with Iran's attack on Al-Udeid military complex. Okay, so starting with the geoeconomy, as we know, Iran is the most sanctioned country in the world and is now looking for business opportunities. The GCC states also are in the business of business opportunities, specifically with the oil era coming to an end. Green energy is becoming way more popular. Green energy allows for states to sell more oil and gas, and along with hydrogen that comes from the green energy, data is also the new oil, and data centers, AI, have become more popular. And the states see that becoming a hub of green energy would be a really great thing. Okay, so Iran was the main power in the region until really October of 2023. And then Israel became the unrestrained hegemon in the region. So the axis of resistance, along with Iran, have been weakened but not destroyed, as we can see. And speaking of Kenneth Waltz, who I am very familiar with the work of, he claims that power begs to be balanced. And then this is more also in a sense of nuclear weapons, that the more the merrier. That's not what we're talking about. We mean more so that, as we've seen recently, specifically the last few days with the summit, world leaders from the region are gathering together to discuss how to disperse the power a little bit more evenly, and to help kind of balance the power. So the United States, President Trump has a very transactional approach to foreign relations. Obviously, he was a businessman first and foremost, so he's looking for business opportunities in the area. And this can be really seen through his recent travels in May of 2025. So very recently to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar. In a U.S. news outlet, the foreign minister of Iran was stated saying that the state is a $1 trillion opportunity. So, thank you. They are definitely looking for more business opportunities, specifically with the U.S., as it was stated in a U.S. news outlet. Okay, so Russia and Iran, they have very steady relations, at least as of now. They recently actually renewed their strategic agreement for the next 20 years. So I would say that's a good, steady relationship. And then speaking of Iran with the GCC, they have OPEC plus with one another, and GCC states did not condemn and have not condemned the war with Ukraine, so there are good relations there. China. So Iran and China also have good relations, actually even growing. They recently signed a $400 billion deal with one another in which China invests in Iran, so that is definitely a growing relationship. And China is so far as the GCC relations are concerned, China is the largest importer of oil and gas from GCC states, along with being the main trade partner. So they have good relations as well. Yes, so the final remarks of this, you might be thinking, why are you mentioning these three main powers? And that is because the three states have mutual interest in de-escalation. So the main point is regional stability is good for all global powers and economies. Peace is a win-win, no matter what. Okay, I would like to pass it on, to my colleague.
Thank you, Katherine, and I would like also to thank Professor Kamrava. I come to this conference almost every year, and every year it is getting better and better, and I meet old friends and make new ones and learn a lot. And also last night we all had great time, and it's great to be back in Doha. And Katherine made many very good points, and I'm very excited about this topic because in the last 10-15 years, in almost every conference, somebody from the Gulf or from Arab country said Iran controls 4 Arab capitals, and not anymore. In the last 2-3 years, people came to accept that by people I mean scholars from the Gulf and officials from the Gulf came to understand that isolating Iran is not in their best interest, that it is better to work with Iran, that this policy of sanctioning Iran, cornering Iran is not working. So this is how Saudi Arabia and Iran normalized, and embassies were opened, Kuwait, UAE. So Katherine talked about relationship between GCC as bloc with Iran. I will go a little bit more specific country by country, but given the time, so we'll be very brief about this, and we'll say a few words about the challenges for de-escalation between GCC states and Iran. Country by country, we'll start with Bahrain. Bahrain, the majority are Shia, and there are large Iranian community in Bahrain, and there are disputed claims if Bahrain is part of Iran or not. And Bahrain also is probably one of the closest US allies in the region. As you all know, the Fifth Fleet is headquartered in Bahrain. So Bahrain is probably the least closest country among GCC to Iran. But Bahrain follows Saudi policy to a great extent. So in the last 2-3 years, there is less tension between Iran and Bahrain. Kuwait, I put the picture of late Amir because I had the honor of meeting him before, and he was one of the longest serving foreign minister. He was foreign minister for 40 years, and Kuwait traditionally tried to balance a relationship with the 3 big powers in the Gulf: Iran, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia. And as you all know, during Iran-Iraq war, Saudi Arabia and Kuwait strongly supported Saddam Hussein. And when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, Kuwait kind of apologized to Iran, either formally or informally. And the late Amir visited Iran and played important role in trying to de-escalate conflict between GCC and Iran. He was foreign minister for 40 years, prime minister for about 3-4 years, then Amir for 10 years. My Kuwaiti friends told me when he was Amir, he was still, his main focus was foreign policy, serving for 40 years as foreign minister, so it's in his blood. And this about Kuwait. Kuwait also is different from other Gulf states. Kuwait has a large Shia minority, but they are more incorporated in the government than Shia in other Gulf states. The opposition in Kuwait usually from Sunnis, so the Shia in Kuwait are much more integrated economically, socially, and politically. For Oman, I visit Oman very often, and Oman shares the state of Hormuz with Iran, and to the best of my knowledge, Oman is the closest country to Iran among GCC states. Not only officially, but even people, when I go to Sultan Qaboos University, the Omanis are The Omanis love the Iranians. There is a lot of mutual interest. And Oman plays major role in mediating between US and Iran. And as you all know, the nuclear deal was negotiated in Oman, and before the recent strikes, Oman also was taking the lead in negotiations. For Qatar here, Qatar and Iran have to be in good terms. Somehow in my mind it's like husband and wife have children, they have to talk to each other, they have to love each other even if they do not. Iran and Qatar share the largest natural gas in the world, the North Field, South Pars, and it is in their best interest to work together to develop this gas. I give credit to Qatari officials, Qatari government. They somehow managed to be in very good terms with United States and with Iran. Okay, for Saudi Arabia, this picture, it was very hard to imagine this happens just 4 or 5 years ago. Prince Khalid, the defense minister, brother of Crown Prince, meeting with Ayatollah, and this shows the sea change in Iran-Saudi relationship. And in the last 2-3 years, Iranian officials go to Saudi Arabia very often, and relations are very different from what it was. And this will have big impact on the region. United Arab Emirates, the 3 islands were and still are a very big issue, but my understanding, in every GCC meeting, in every Arab League meeting, they mention the 3 islands, and Iran says the 3 islands are ours, and then everybody moves on. So I'm not sure it is a big challenge, but the 2 sides talk about it, but this 3-island dispute has not stopped the warming up of relationship between UAE and Iran. Part of it also, there is very large Iranian community in Dubai and other places in UAE, and Dubai is major trade partner of Iran. So like relationship between any 2 parties, between any 2 countries, there are positive and negative aspects, pros and cons. But between UAE and Iran, I believe there are more pros and more areas of common interest. Moving on to our last 3 points, and also I will turn if Katherine wants to add anything. The 2 main challenges to the warming up of relationship between Iran and GCC states. One of them, US as the main security provider. GCC states till today believe their security is very much related to the presence of US troops here. And probably the war in Gaza, United States is the main negotiating partner. Even with the attack on Qatar just a few days ago, US is still the main security provider. Iran, even under the Shah, always wanted foreign powers out of the region. So how to reconcile this challenge is yet to be seen. The point here, GCC states believe United States is the main security partner. Iran disagrees. The other main challenge to warming of relationship between GCC and Iran potential Saudi-Israeli normalization. It looks less likely now, but it has been the main policy of United States under first Trump administration, Biden administration, and second Trump administration. Saudi Arabia is different from UAE and from Bahrain, from Morocco, given Saudi Islamic credential. Normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel will be a very big deal. If this happens, it is not clear how Iran will react. The last point we want to make in this presentation is about the attack on El Udeid base and also the recent attack by Israel. The first attack, Iranian attack, my understanding, the Qataris, the GCC states kind of understand that Iran had to react. Iran was attacked by Israel and the United States, and I believe the reaction here in GCC was kind of mild. We understand that Iran, at least for domestic public opinion, had to do something. And the Iranian foreign minister came here and he stated everything is fine now. So my sense is it was very measured, mild reaction, very different from GCC reaction to Israeli attack. And this where we stand now. The warming up of relations is moving, and probably my last point, something I read in Financial Times, and it makes perfect sense to me. It is very hard for millions of Arabs, Iranians, and Turks to accept that the region will be dominated by only 9 million people, Israel, and this is why in the Arab Islamic Summit just a few days ago, Turkish, Iranian, Pakistani, Arab leaders came and trying to restore the balance of power Katherine talked about. Thank you.
الورقة الثانية.
The second paper will be by Dr. Mehran Haghirian, Shifting Tides in the Gulf, Growing Diplomatic Engagement between Iran and the GCC states in a Changing Middle East. Dr. Mehran, تفضل.
Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Thank you very much, Dr. Mehran Kamrava, for your beautiful name and for inviting me as well. I changed my presentation a bit because I wanted to complement what was going to be said. I was almost sure that Dr. Bahgat will summarize all of the recent developments for us all. And I wanted to basically present you the trends and trajectories in the foreign policy decision-making of the GCC states towards Iran, and within the context of the shifting geopolitical tides of the Persian Gulf. And thank you. So yes, the title of my paper is Shifting Tides in the Persian Gulf, Growing Diplomatic Engagements between Iran and the GCC States in a Changing Middle East. The geopolitics of the region have long been shaped by deep-seated rivalries, divergent security perceptions, and the interplay of regional and extra-regional actors and factors. For Tehran, the GCC states, although significant, are not its primary security concern. But for the Gulf states, Iran looms large as both a geopolitical rival and a potential economic partner, depending on the prevailing security and political context, as well as sometimes it can be both at the same time. This divergence in threat perception has fueled decades of tension, mistrust, and intermittent engagement, and at times led to inter-GCC conflicts as well. So the main point that I want to look at, a research question, is how do domestic and external factors and the consequences of critical events shape the foreign policy decision-making calculus of the Arab states of the Persian Gulf towards Iran, and what are the implications of these divergent strategies on the geopolitical future of the region? This research largely builds on my PhD dissertation that I also submitted last year. I'm looking at foreign policy decision-making, and basically I'm looking at comparative foreign policy analysis, but the main argument that really runs through my paper is that the foreign policy decision-making calculus is not a linear process, but rather it's an iterative one. It builds on feedback from previous decisions, changes in international and domestic environments, new developments and information, which all lead to re-evaluation and adjustments of foreign policy strategies. So strategic hedging and pragmatism largely influence the foreign policy decision-making calculus of the GCC states, but again, all have a different approach. Saudi Arabia and the UAE prioritize national security and power politics, but in distinct ways. Qatar and Kuwait favor multilateral institutions, international law, and economic interdependencies, but with different priorities. Oman considers non-material factors, cultural values, and historical relationships, while Bahrain largely subscribes to a neoclassical realist approach to sheltering. So I came up with a critical framework to understand this and the decision-making process and calculus of the GCC states towards Iran. So this framework really integrates internal, regional, and international variables alongside critical events. It moves beyond static realist assumptions and recognizes the agency of smaller states within a securitized and interconnected regional order. It applied to developments between 1971 to 2025 to understand the diplomatic shifts from 2021. So in my research, basically, I divided these 5 decades into 7 phases. I'm not getting into any of that here because of time and because most of the content was really discussed yesterday and this morning with Dr. Bahgat. But to understand the shifts in phases, I think it's important to understand the phases. And that's why you can see that there's not a fixed set of time, or it's not a 5-year period. It depends on the prevailing security and political situation of the region itself. But particularly my focus is on phase 6 and 7 here. For the critical factors, what I'm looking at is public opinion, external influence, such as, for example, relations with the US and Israel, the regional role, the regional ambitions of these countries, the military engagements, including the presence of, for example, foreign military within their territories, such as the US presence in Bahrain and Qatar and elsewhere, economic relations, including trade, sheer demography of the population, territorial links, such as those that Dr. Bahgat mentioned, including the Strait of Hormuz with Oman, for example, or the gas field with Qatar, as well as history. And the critical events that I'm looking at also start from the Iran-Iraq war and lead to and continue with the leadership transition in Iran, the US invasion of Iraq, the Arab uprisings, the Iran nuclear agreement, Saudi-Iran spat, Trump's maximum pressure campaign, and the Saudi-Iran rapprochement, which then leads to the Iran-Israel war as well. My research is largely qualitative, but I came up with a quantitative approach in trying to visualize this, the differences between the foreign policy approach of these states. So if you look, for example, at this graph, I'm not going to get into much of the details of it, but you can see that, for example, Oman is on a league on its own in terms of its relationships with Iran. And if you look at, for example, at the last part of the graph, you would see that the second country would be Qatar in terms of positive relationships, and then it would be followed by Kuwait, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain. To make it a bit more simple, this is a matrix type of the graph. So basically it shows you the trends and trajectory through the past 5 decades. This allows us to really go back to the main point that I wanted to make in the sense that foreign policy decision making is really iterative in the sense that it's not static and it depends on the prevailing security and political situation of the region at a particular time. So that's why it's good to understand it in this way. And for example, once we have a new development, it doesn't necessarily cause negative turn, immediately it creates a new shift, basically, in the strategy towards Iran by the GCC states. To make it a bit more clear for you, for example, there are two scenarios that we can look at in terms of the post-2025, let's say after the Iran-Israel war, and how the region will react to it. So for example, if we assume that there's going to be an agreement between Iran and the US, how would that have an impact on the relationship between Iran and the GCC states? So for example, there are three different models that I'm using. So there's a 3-point scale, there's a 5-point scale, and there's a macro model. So, but to make it easier to understand here, I'm using the 3-point scale. But generally speaking, what this shows is that if there is a positive diplomatic or global, let's say even development that has an impact on the geopolitics of the region, it does have a positive impact on the relationships between the GCC states and Iran, but it also has its own considerations within the context of the critical factors that I mentioned too, with regards to the military engagements, public opinion, and all of those. So it's not automatically all positive, and that's why you would see a variation in the approaches by the 6 GCC states towards Iran. So that's why there's rarely you would see that even the numbers would be the same for 2 of the 6 countries. To visualize it again, you can see that the trend since 2023 with the rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia has been positive. So, and it has had an impact in a positive form on all 6 relationships, and even including Bahrain, which we have seen in the past year. There has been growing engagements, either through diplomatic engagements or elsewhere. Again, but the 6 that I mentioned earlier would still be the same in the sense of the order. So again, Oman leads the way, then it's Qatar, then it's Kuwait, then it's the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain. But the point is that the trajectory shifts in a more positive direction. But if you have the second scenario, if, for example, Iran withdraws from the NPT, what would happen? So that's, for example, these are the 2 upcoming scenarios in terms of the current developments that we are in right now. So obviously that has its own consequences within the context of the geopolitics of the region, and obviously increasing tensions between Iran and the US has an impact on the Gulf itself. So even with regards to relations with Oman and Qatar, which, as I mentioned and you've seen, is positive, it does have a negative impact on it as well, but not as significant for it to have a strong downward turn. So again, to visualize it, you would see that, again, including with Oman, it still has that shift towards becoming negative because it will have a general negative consequences on the geopolitics of the region. But again, it's different in the sense of how they would be going about it. Yeah, I'm done. Thank you very much.
So we're going to have our third paper, which is going to be presented by Roxana. So she's going to talk about the power dynamism. So Dr. Roxana is an assistant professor of European Studies at Tehran University, and she concentrates on foreign European policy, and she's presented a number of papers in local and international conferences. And also Roxana, she has presented papers at conferences both home and abroad, and also published books, articles, and papers in various journals in this area.
Okay, sorry. Again, good morning. I would like to express my gratitude for the opportunity to present my research outcome in this prestigious conference, especially thanks to Professor Kamrava for this opportunity. Today, I wish to address one of the most significant contemporary geopolitical developments directly affecting the future of our region and the Persian Gulf. This narrow maritime corridor has served for nearly half a century as one of the most pivotal theaters politics. And for Iran, the Persian Gulf transcends its role as a vital maritime transit zone or hydrocarbon repository. The region represents the historical interface through which Persian civilization has encountered and often clashed with some things like Arab polities, external naval forces, and evolving concept of regional order. The European Union, long content to observe Washington and increasingly Beijing project power into the Gulf, has now sought to craft a recognizable profile of its own in region. The motive readily trackable, for example, energy supply diversification, anxiety over maritime choke points, escalating weapons sales to GCC capitals, and the spillover effect of Yemen conflict into international shipping lanes. And all of these have collectively alerted Brussels that benign neglect is no longer cost-free. Excuse me. The central question of my research is how do the European Union evolving policies towards the Persian Gulf reshapes Iran interactions with Arab neighbors. It's very important issues because the Gulf is one of the world's most critical energy transit routes, and after 2022 Ukrainian crisis, European Union seeking energy diversifications, and because of shifting regional power balance with new external actor, especially China. And most analysis about this focus on, for example, US-Iran relations or China-GCC relations or FTA between free trade agreements between European Union and GCC countries and the future of integration between them, and EU's emerging role understudied. To address the question, I employ the Stefan Walt theoretical framework in his seminal work, The Origin of Alliance. He argues that the state calibrate their alliance not merely based on power aggregates, but rather on the specific combination of threat perception. And I think the current relations between Iran, the trajectory between Iran, EU, and GCC countries, it's more balance of threats, not balance of power. And it's important because I think, I continue and then complete it. Four key elements of that perception traits, it's aggregate capabilities, offensive capabilities, geographic proximity, and perceived intentions. And I think the last one is the most important because one of the most problem in Iranian foreign policy towards GCC and towards all neighbors and especially towards European Union is the lacking aesthetics. The aesthetic dimensions has a direct connection to Walt theory, and not as a core component of theory, but as a factor that influence threat perceptions. And for example, because of the lack of aesthetic dimensions, this causes even similar action to be interpreted differently. For example, European military presence in the region means maintaining stability, and Iran military presence means regional threats. And so Iran's aesthetic deficit shifts the balance of threat against itself, not based on actual power, but based on perception of intentions. If sustained EU-GCC cooperation convinced Tehran that hostile coalitions are germinating on its southern flank, Iranian leaders may intensify their hedging behaviors. This could include enhanced defense ties with Russia or China or asymmetric maritime tactics in the region. Conversely, if the same cooperation is interpreted as a gateway to sanctioned reliefs or technology access or crisis hotlines, Iran could pivot towards selective engagement with Europe and GCC countries and thereby easing friction with, for example, Riyadh or Abu Dhabi. Excuse me. The European Union has made a gradual yet deliberate effort to play a more active and independent role in the Persian Gulf. The major policy milestone was a document named a Strategic Partnership with the Gulf that launched on May 2022. And it's based on 4 pillars: regional security, energy diversification, a stress to clean energy, not, for example, the classical energy like oil or gas, green hydrogen partnership, and shared threats, counterterrorism cooperation, cyber risks, and climate change, and finally, institutional ties in educational and cultural cooperation. And to implement this strategy, the EU has significantly enhanced its diplomatic and security presence in Persian Gulf. For example, a new delegation in Qatar in 2022 or Oman in 2023. And one of the most important action of European Union according to this strategy is European Maritime Assistance Strait of Hormuz, EMASOH, that is the kind of naval cooperation that launched on 2020. I can say that the European Union routinely describes the Persian Gulf as a region of shared strategic interest and outline 3 overarching goals: ensuring regional stability and security, enhancing energy cooperation, and tackling shared transnational threats. About relations between Iran and the 6 GCC members cannot be described with a single label. Rather, each bilateral tie reflects a distinct blend of threat perception, commercial calculus, and elite ideology. For example, I identified 3 patterns of relation between Iran and 6 GCC countries. The first pattern is cooperative pragmatism with Qatar and Oman based on enhanced trade and mediation role. The second one is calibrated engagement with Emirates and Kuwait based on economic ties and security concerns remains. And the third pattern is security driven antagonism with Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, especially Bahrain, based on strategic mistrust and maybe missile threats. But I think the conflict between Iran and Israel on June 2025 is like a game changer because it's exposed European Union diplomatic limitation in resilience building in the Persian Gulf region and reveals Iran continue regional relevance and complicate normalization trajectory with the region countries. Let me now analyze Iran's strategic position using the SWOT or SWOT framework in facing the Iran growing role. The SWOT analyzing method includes two environments, external and internal environment, that strengths and weaknesses includes internal environment and threats and opportunities related to external environment. In some strength is geostrategic centrality of Iran, Strait of Hormuz control, diplomatic expertise, soft power access in some Shia countries and cultural influence. And weaknesses includes trust deficit because Iran experienced many years the EU sanctions and economic isolation because the trade relation between Iran and European Union, it's more limited and we can't compare it with GCC and European Union countries. And there are some threats, for example, strategic encirclement of Iran, EU-GCC security because of Iran, EU-GCC security convergence, and normative isolation because of some human right conditionality, and techno-strategic exclusion because of European Union, US Arab tech cooperation. And actually there are some opportunities, for example, green energy potential because of Iran vast solar and wind resources, EU-GCC tensions in human rights matters and governance disputes, and crisis management role in regional stability. According to these SWOT patterns, we can identify two scenarios about the relation between Iran and GCC with mediation of European Union. The first one is hard balance strategy, that means confrontation and counter-alignment. The most component of this strategy is deepen Russian-China military ties, expand excess of resistance, accelerate missile or drone capability, and challenge EU maritime presence. It's very costly scenario because increased sanctions, isolation of Iran, and opportunity losses. The second scenario is based on targeted cooperation, but in non-security domains. The most important component of this scenario is cooperation in some things like climate or renewable energy project, leverage Oman and Qatar mediation, and it's very important things in this situation for European Union is symbolic domestic reforms in Iran. It's beneficial because gradual reintegration and reduced tensions and some tech accesses. But in reality, I think hybrid approach most likely because combining elements of both scenario. I pass this. In conclusion, I want to say that EU's Gulf engagement reshape Iran-Arab relations with through a structural influence, not military power. And balance of territory explains Iran hedging behavior better than pure power-based analysis. And sustainable regional order required inclusive engagement, not gradual marginalization. And my final thought is the Persian Gulf's future depends on moving from confrontation to share responsibility framework. Thank you very much.
ما بين الجانبين.
some questions. We'll give each speaker 3-4 minutes. Questions please, not comments. أسئلة وليس تعليقات لو تكرمتم. أولاً الرجاء استخدام الميكروفون حتى نسمعه.
That GCC established that 1982, but the name is the Persian Gulf or the Gulf Cooperation Council, but it is not cover all of the states of the Persian Gulf coastal countries. Therefore, what do you think about a new idea and initiative like GCC Plus, that GCC plus Iran and Iraq, because Iran and Iraq also, both of them, they have common borders with Persian Gulf. And the second question is from Dr. Haghirian. He talks about, unfortunately, his slides doesn't have number, and I have some. If you go to your slides, I have some questions. Okay, I don't know what is the sources of your data about the opinion of Arab states, peoples in the street about Iran. But intuitively, and as I know by some other data, I think it is not very far the opinion of Omani's people about Iran with people in United Arab Emirates, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, or Kuwait, or other countries. I don't know what is your sources, and if you tell me about is it opinion, is it poll? I don't know what was the reference of your, and the issues of the numbers. You show us a lot of numbers. Are they indicators, dimensions, scales? I don't know what was that. And the last point is why two scenarios only? You know better that two scenarios are not very perfect for future studies and something like that. And the last point is about Dr. Niknami. You mentioned a word, in stakes. What is in stakes? Thank you.
Thank you. I have very briefly the question. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for the fruitful presentation by distinguished panelists. I have the question from the distinguished panelist, John, and his colleague. As it rightly raised that the Iran is under the most sanctioned, that you, as I understanding, and you raise here. You know very well that I would like to raise that one of the most unprecedented sanction, or it's better we can call it a unilateral coercive measure, including of sanction imposed by the United States and its other stakeholder, i.e. the European Union, against the Islamic Republic of Iran. And as it rightly raised by the Dr. Professor Alana Tohan, the imposing of unilateral coercive measures contradicts totally with international law, international humanitarian law, international human rights law. Personally, I believe that the imposing of this unilateral coercive measure and sanction as the one economic terrorism and as crime against humanity. And as you know very well, it's contradicts totally with Declaration of 1917 of General Assembly on principle of international law and friendly relation among our states. For these reasons, I think that the access to the remedy and redress is utmost important in the issue of the sanction. In the November of the last year, the special rapporteur presented the report to the 79 General Assembly in the New York. The report, the title is Equal Access to the Justice, Remedy and the Redress for the country that targeted by this illegal and legitimate sanction. At the end, last but not least, I would like to raise this question from your distinguished, what do you think about the negative impact of this unilateral coercive measure and the sanction on the future relation between Iran and the Persian Gulf countries? Thank you.
Yes, please.
Okay, I have a question I would like to ask Dr. Bahgat. You mentioned that you believe that the GCC countries' reaction to the Al-Udeid attack were pretty mild, and you said that they understood that Iran had to do that. I would like to ask, what do you think they might react to the probable upcoming another round of attacks by Iran to the United States bases in the Persian Gulf in case tensions intensify between the United States and Iran in the future?
Other questions? Yes, please. There.
Thank you. I'm Bayram Singh. I want to raise my question to Dr. Bahgat and Dr. Haghirian. I'm especially curious about the normalization between Saudi Arabia and Iran, how substantial it is, considering the Saudi role in intercepting Iranian missiles against Israel. Whether can we build on this argument that Iran-Saudi normalization or they have good relations? Thank you.
And the last question, then, please.
Thank you. My question is going to be very direct, very short to the first paper. As you have mentioned, that there is a vacuum now in the Middle East. Two capitals has been left from the Iranians' heritage. So Iran now doesn't control Lebanon and Syria, but this vacuum needs another power to place it or to fill it. Giving or taking in consideration that Israel's vision of the new Middle East and the Americans' existence too are going to be refused by the people. I mean, the majority and the public opinion. It's very obvious, especially in these two countries. So, what do you think is going to? What do you predict for the next few years here in the region, especially for these two countries?
Okay, 3 minutes for each speaker. Yes, please.
Thank you. And first about enlarging GCC. As you know, GCC was created as security organization during Iran-Iraq war. And since then, there have been talks about expanding it, not only to include Iran and Iraq, but even Yemen. And the record is mixed. Some people believe GCC is one of the most successful regional organizations. It has been around since 1982 till today, so almost 50 years or 45 years. But there are disagreements within GCC, just the blockade against Qatar a few years ago, relationship between Qatar on one side, UAE and Bahrain on the other side. There is some tension. So I am not sure it can expand, but there is realization, and this will take us to the second question about sanctions. that there is sense in the region, and former Foreign Minister Zarif wrote article in journal few days ago saying basically that we Muslims, Arabs, and Iranians should work together. There is sense that given that Iran is the most sanctioned country in the world, this is fact. It is not if sanctions are good or bad, but it is fact that Iran is the most sanctioned country in the world. But Iran is very rich in resources, potential. So if you put Iranian large population, more than 80 million people, well-educated people, very strong work ethics with Gulf money and combine them together, it is win-win. So regardless of expanding GCC or not, but working together will create jobs to everybody, will help economic prosperity, stability, and this is why there is even change in GCC Saudi attitude about sanctions. When Obama negotiated the nuclear deal, Saudi Arabia, UAE, other Gulf states were against any de-escalation between US and Iran. Now it is very different, because Gulf states, as Katherine said, are very interested in economic development. This Vision 2030, 2040 cannot be achieved without stability, without de-escalation between US and Iran. One last point, Iran never controlled 4 Arab capitals. Many people here from Iran know better than me. These so-called proxies, they have never taken orders from Tehran. They have always enjoyed some autonomy. There is some coordination, but in Iran, as far as I know, they do not call them proxies. They are allies. They work together. And when General Sulaiman was killed, this centralization became even less, and they enjoy much more autonomy, and they work within their own countries. Thank you.
Katherine, do you have a comment? It's okay. Okay, Dr. Mehran.
Thank you very much for your questions. So with regards to the public opinion sources, the research largely relies on around 25 expert interviews, basically interviews with experts and practitioners who are working on the Gulf region. But in terms of the numbers that to illustrate what the public opinion is within each of the 6 GCC states, there are annual polls that are being released every year on the public opinion towards Iran and towards the regional geopolitics as well. So that's mainly what the research relies on. I definitely think there is a difference between how the Omanis view Iran and how Emiratis view Iran and how Qataris view Iran and how Saudis view Iran. But within the context of the scale, and as you asked with the numbers, I mentioned there's a 3-point scale, there's a 5-point scale, and there's a macro scale that I was using for this research. But the 3-point scale actually makes it easier in the sense of it's actually very straightforward. 0 means neutral, -1 is a negative turn in that relationship because of that factor, or if it's +1, it's a positive factor because of that that was mentioned. And why 2 scenarios? I wish I could present more scenarios, but these are the 2 that I thought would be relevant to our work today. And on the question with regards to Iran-Saudi relations, I think since 2023, it's been on a positive trajectory. It has not backtracked. It has paused at some instances briefly, but it has been on a positive trajectory since 2023, and I think it's going to continue for you.
Thank you, Dr. Mehran. Dr.
Okay, about the question of Dr. Maliki, I should say that what is meant by mistakes, is establishing a mechanism resembling the EU's INSTEX for relations with regional countries following following the reimposition of sanctions, some cooperation in green energies and people-to-people cooperation that is not security, includes security relations. It's not exactly in INSTEX that European Union identify. Yeah, I mean INSTEX as a mechanism and patterns for relations between Iran and GCC countries after the restarting the sanctions. I don't know, but there is no option, more option. It's very realistic choice.
Okay. Is there any other question? No. I'll give 1 minute for Dr. Bahgat. Then.
Okay. Just I want to end on positive note. First, as I mentioned, United States is by far the main security provider in the region. But yesterday there was kind of interesting development. Saudi Arabia signed a security agreement with Pakistan. My understanding is kind of after the attack here in Qatar, Saudi Arabia and other GCC states are entertaining the idea of other security providers, but I believe the bottom line, when there is threat, it is United States. Pakistan will never replace United States. Another point about Iran-Saudi relationship, again, it's amazing the sea change. Just a few years ago, the Crown Prince said, Ayatollah makes Hitler look good. And now, few years later, he's sending his younger brother to meet with Ayatollah. International relations, in my mind, is never a zero-sum game. There is always room for win-win. There is room for everybody to win. And this is why my last point, I always believe at the end of the day, Arabs, Iranians, Turks, and Israelis have always lived side by side in the Middle East and will always do. And somehow they have to find a way to live together because none of them will leave. Thank you.
1 or 2 questions. First, please. Yes.
Hello. So I want to ask Mr. Bahgat, what do you think the impact of the strike on Qatar, the Israeli strike on Qatar, its impact on the relationship between Iran and the GCC? Do you think it's going to improve the relationships or the opposite? Thank you.
Yes, please.
سؤالي هو للدكتور بهجت. لماذا عندما تتحدث عن التحالفات الأمنية
When you talk about security alliances between the GCC countries and the United States of America, you say that they need a security provider for the GCC. But when you talk about the Iranian proxies in Lebanon, Syria, or Yemen, you say that they are called allies in Iran and not proxies. What is the difference? Although the relationship between the GCC countries and the security providers is between a country and a country, but the relationship between Iran and the proxies, it is a relationship between a country and proxies or armed militias. أعتقد أن هجوم إسرائيل على دولة قطر هو
that Iran can say now You do not need to be afraid of us. There is no Shia, Sunni, there is no Arab, Persian. You see, you've been attacked by Israel like we Iranians have been attacked by Israel. So, as Katherine mentioned, Israel has made significant military victories, gains, but Israeli leaders have failed to articulate a vision of the region after these attacks. And it is said before October 23, Israel was on its way to be accepted by some of its neighbors. Now, this is not the case. And again, the last point I mentioned that at the end of the day, Arabs, Iranian, Turks, and Israelis will always be part of the Middle East. Second question about Iran's relation with non-state actors vis-a-vis GCC relations with states. Qatar works with Hamas, worked with the Taliban. I believe it's the important point to work with whoever is in charge, if it is nation, state, government, or non-state actor. So, Iran, according to United States government, did not know about Hamas attack in October 23, but you work with states or non-state actors. Qatar is doing it, Iran is doing it. All countries work with whoever is in charge. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bahgat. Okay, we can conclude this session at time. شكرا جزيلا للحضور الكريم على
Thank you very much. We'd like to thank you for your time, and we'd like to thank the different panelists. The following session is going to start after 10 minutes.